Hello and welcome, I'm JD, and today we're going to go through the September minor update titled Fleet Management. So first off, when you come into hull badges, you'll now see the directory where the custom badges are stored, so you'll always be able to go back and find that, but also the requirements to upload a badge. So it's always been the 256 by 256 PNG. However, all fleet badges need to be below that 32,000 thereabouts bytes. There was an issue, it has been fixed in this current patch, where when a lobby of say 8 or 10 people got together, if their combined badge sizes were above a certain number, it was crashing the game. So that was identified, has been fixed, and so now you just want to keep it around that 32,000 bytes. I haven't tested to see what will happen if you load something higher than the 32,000 bytes. I imagine maybe it just doesn't show up or it doesn't recognize. I'll have to have a look at that and get back to you all. One thing that has been asked for a long time and now has been implemented is the ability to manage your fleet. So if we come into load an existing fleet, and straight off the bat, you'll see a few different things. One, you'll have all the current ships that are currently listed here are now under a fleets file. I can add new folders. So in this one, I will call it starter fleets. And you can see that we now have a directory appearing here. And I can just take my fleets and drop them straight onto the file. And that's where it'll then be saved. So when you create a new folder, this one I'll call game fleets, you'll see that it takes you back to the parent fleets folder. When I double click into it, I can enter into any of the subordinates. Here's all my test fleets. And if I come back up to fleets, you can see everything again. And by just double clicking between each of the folders, I can open and close them. If I double click back on fleets, it'll bring them all back. And so we also have the ability to search for a fleet. So if you know exactly what you want, so I'll look for my Leap of Henrietta battleship. So I've called LOH. There you go. Everything with LO has been identified. And if I now go to H, or even just a lowercase h, so you don't have to be 100% accurate. It's a bit of fuzzy matching by the looks of it there, if that's the right term. I don't know. I've got quite a few fleets. A lot of them that I use for testing in particular. This is a great feature, so I can actually find what I'm looking for now very simply. A lot of them I have moved out of the fleet folders previously, just so that I was able to keep it clean. So now I can actually move them all back in. Just a bit of an addendum to what I previously just said in terms of talking about the game fleets. If you already have a lot of them in your game files and you don't want to manually move them one by one, because that is a restriction, you can only select one at a time and to drop it into its fleet folder, you can actually come into the game files and you can just do it all here. So here you can see everything with test prefix. I'm going to just drag and drop into the test folder. So at the moment, we've only got 2 fleets there. And scroll down, test. There we go. I'll drop them all into the test folder. And if I then come back, you won't see it at the moment. So I'll cancel back. I'll cancel out. I'll load a new fleet. And so now you can see all my test fleets now located in the same folder. And so that's going to make it nice and easy to manage all your fleet files without having to individually go through and do it one by one. Whilst we're talking about fleets, and I don't have anything to show in the background whilst I talk about it, is that the Steam Cloud support for fleets, ship templates, and missile templates has now been enabled. So what this means is if you have your Steam account and you log in on one computer and then you log out and go to another computer, you can take all your fleets through the cloud with you, so you don't have to then transfer the .xml files that you previously had to do. All right, so changes to templates. Templates have been introduced into the game for a while, so you can obviously load a blank hull. Likewise, you could always load a ship template. Previously, if you came into a ship template, noting it has the ability to also be utilized as part of the folder system, and you selected a fleet that had missiles in it, then when you came in, it wouldn't actually preload any of the missiles that you wanted to have in your fleet. So here you can see that this fleet originally had some missiles loaded in, it now doesn't. So the change here that has been made is if you come into the missile designer, we're going to just load a template, add some missiles. We're going to create this blueprint. What did I previously call this one? It was, we're going to override it. And so when I come into a new fleet now, and I add the same hull, there it is. you'll see that the missiles are now added in. So that's a new change that has been added. It'll also add over in the missile designer, so you can build those templates. You don't have to then go off, find the missiles that you had, then come back, re-add them every time, which can be quite frustrating if you're trying to template a lot of ships into your fleets. All right, there are two changes that you need to be aware of on the deployment screen that will occur when you're playing multiplayer. And I can't give you a demonstration of this specifically, so I'm just going to gesture at certain things simply because it doesn't work by myself with the computer. All right, so what will occur is when half of all the players and one player on each team have clicked the deploy button, then what will commence is a 60-second countdown timer in order to commence the game. So when you've previously had an example like this before where Team 2's ready, Team 1 isn't, and you've got some person who just decides that they've gone AFK for whatever reason, you're now going to have that 60-second timer that will commence. And so when you deploy in or you ready up in the lobby, be ready to play the game because it's going to move pretty quickly. So you'll have 60 seconds. And then when that 60-second counts down, if you haven't readied up or you haven't selected any of your fleets, then your ships will randomly spawn within the deployment zone. And so this will only apply if you have more than 2 people on a team. So if you're playing in a 1v1, you're not going to automatically get this. It does need to have more than 1 person per team in order to trigger the event. So the next thing I want to show you is that you can now turn off the background noise when you're up close on a ship and then you enter the tactical view. So you can access it by coming into settings, accessibility, and then disable tac view ambience, which I have done here. So I've turned my sound effects all the way up so you can hear this. If I get nice and close to the ship, you can hear the background hum. I won't stay there too long. And if I now go into the tactical view by pressing space, you can see that I'm still nice and close to the ship. However, when I am on the tactical view, you're not going to hear that at all. So a nice little change there. One ability that I already thought was in the game. So here you can see I've got all my Mark 64 cannons that are not in a group. If you hold the shift key while right clicking, as you would normally for a formation order, and then you come to weapons, you can obviously then release shift once you're in this panel. You'll now see that all of those individual guns are now grouped together. So you can just fire all guns at the same position or the same target without having to necessarily have them in a formation or in a group. This gives you the ability to fire 4 individual cannons, or when you actually need to come in and fire them all at the same target. A small change now to quality of life. So here I've got a whole bunch of AI ships. You can see that the light cruiser track 1481 has now spotted my ship, the ANZ bound, because we now have the yellow icon that has been displayed. If you now mouse over that, it's going to say tracked by enemy active sensors. Previously, it did give you a warning. I can't remember what it was, but it's going to say active sensors. So we're talking about actual radars and not things such as pinards, etc., which are more passive. And so just a little bit more clarity around what that symbol is. And I think that will help newer players a little bit more. The final thing I'm going to show you here is now a new animation that occurs when you pass the withdrawal line. And so I'm going to move my ship over to the withdrawal line, and then I'm going to speed it up and show you what it looks like. So here you can see my ship has left the withdrawal line. The counter has counted down, and you can see that my ship has now been given a heading that will move itself off into the outer reaches of this map. And so if I now just follow this ship, and I'm going to leave it in the cinematic view, you can see the animation for yourself. I think this will be a cool animation when conquest occurs, as you may want to actually move your ships outside the withdrawal line to save them. And there you go, that's what it'll look like. All right, so onto some balance changes. They're all missile related. So in the patch notes, the first one is that the Electro-Optical Seeker has had a better explanation of target discrimination behavior added to it. I've gone back and had a look at my modular missile update video, where I had a copy of what the original wording says, and to me it looks exactly the same. I've asked Mazer about it. I could be missing something and just looking in the wrong area or the wrong tooltip, but at the moment I can't see anything different. But whilst I'm here, I think it would be good to understand exactly what level of intelligence. Is it at the warship? Is it the hull classification? I think that should be present on this a tooltip here. And so whilst we're also on the EO Seeker, The target selection finalization distance has been reduced from 2.5 kilometers down to 1.5. And so what that means is the seeker would previously acquire the target if it had enough intelligence, or validate the target if it had enough intelligence at 2.5 kilometers. So it was potentially locking onto something that you didn't want to lock onto. And so now it's at 1.5. So hopefully you should be able to get the missile closer to the intended target. And then the seeker will be able to finalize that target at 1.5 and then lock in and move on to that target in order to provide the effects that you want. So the size 1 missile now has doubled its programming time. It was 3 seconds. It's now 6 seconds. So this is in response to the fact that the size 1 missile was being launched very much with impunity in massive waves. The modular missile update did not remove the missile spam as really intended. So it's trying to still work towards that with these balance changes. People were firing huge amounts of size 1 missiles that were not relying necessarily on armor penetration and damage, but simply getting those stacking critical events that were then eventually being able to overwhelm a ship and then causing it to be destroyed. And the other effect was people's computers were suffering a huge amount of lag and potentially even dropping games because of the amount of calculations and things on screen that the size 1 missile spam was causing. So that's now gone up to 6 seconds. So whilst we're on the size 1 missile, whilst the programming time has increased, this won't affect the missile if it's been used in an anti-missile missile or an AMM role. So if you have the weapon role set to defensive, then the point defense controller, which is the script in the game, will launch in accordance with what you've set here on the defensive targeting doctrine. Noting that I'm on 106% UI scaling, so that's why the D is a little bit weird there. And so is resume search, just in case anyone's wondering. So if you're using it in an offensive role, you're going to have to wait 6 seconds. If you're in a defensive role, then you will launch in accordance with the targeting doctrine that you've established. So the size 2 missile has had its HP or its body integrity go from 20 up to 30. The size 2 hybrid has come down from 35 down now to 25. So this should bring it more in line to the size 3, which has the size 3 missile have more HP than its hybrid at the same size. The body cost has increased from 2 points up to 4 points, so that's made it more expensive. And you've also now had the fact that its programming time has been increased from 8 seconds now up to 10 seconds. So the other part of the spam was occurring is that the size 1 missile was one way to go, and the other way was a lot of size 2 hybrids. So the size 2 bus and the size 1 missile that was doing a sprint to contact effectively. So ultimately, if I was to sum up the size 2 hybrid, it's become a little bit weaker, so you should be able to shoot it down a little bit more. It costs a bit more in terms of initial points costs, and its programming time has increased. So you're going to effectively be able to bring less of them and take longer to fire them, and they'll be easier to destroy. However, you still obviously have the ability for them to be faster than their size 2 counterpart. So a change to the fast startup module. It previously had a failure rate of 15%, so it now has a failure rate at 20%. So ideally, if you have a lot of missiles that have the fast startup module attached, effectively 1 in 5, thereabouts, because each one's obviously going to be a little bit random, so you might get lucky and they're all fine, but theoretically 1 in 5 would be destroyed if you were to fire a significant amount of missiles using the fast startup module. So whilst you do get the programming time benefit, you now take on a little bit more risk in terms of the failure rate. So the final change is the stacking penalty fall off for missile support modules has been modified so that it's brought in line with the ship components. So what will occur is your first one will always be the 100% effective. So here you can see I have a hardened skinned module attached. So it adds a +20 to the body integrity or the HP of the missile. So we have down here under additional stats, the body integrity is +20. However, if I add a second one, instead of getting the full 20, you'll only get 36% of that, which will be about 7.2%. If you're asking how I got that, I already did the maths. And there we have. So your first one will be 100%. Your second one will be 36%. You can't take more than 2. So you don't have any further fall off after that. All right, there are a number of bug fixes that have also been addressed. I'm just going to put them on the screen at the moment. The main one that I'll probably want to just mention is the fact that there have been some network stability issues that people were disconnecting and crashing. if I go back to the devlog, it says, after some deep investigation of our netcode, the root cause of the infamous disconnected while loading bug has been found and squashed. They've also made some changes to the network library, so they hopefully solve the occasional limit exceeded disconnect that would occur when lots of sensor activity was happening. Now, does this mean anything to me? Not necessarily. Doesn't mean anything to you. It means hopefully that you're not going to be disconnected from the games and you'll actually get to see them to completion. And so if you're noticing that they are still disconnecting, either leave a comment down on the video below, or if you're in the Discord, make sure you're throwing that in bug reports so that it can be looked at. And so that's it for this month's minor update. Mazer was talking about, I can't exactly remember when or where, that he was going to try for minor updates every month while he's working in Conquest mode in addition. So if you do have a feature suggestion, and it is particularly a quality of life one, for example, the fleet folders, definitely head across to the Discord, put it in there. They do download it every month. Have a look at it. Your upvotes and downvotes do matter, as you can see previously on the screen, that the fleet folders were particularly mentioned and voted for quite a lot. And that way it just enters their backlog. They can have a look at it, make the game more enjoyable for you. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching and take care.